about the final report at this press conference, okay? However, there will be a post-hearing briefing immediately after the meeting in the boardroom straight through, room 2. So with that, we will have to end the press conference exactly at 8:45 so that the task force can prepare for the meeting and the hearing, and thank you again. We're waiting on Chair Moore, and we are also waiting on the Secretary of State. So with that, we will have Dr. Grills kick us off.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Hello, is anybody out there?
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.
You're also human beings. It's early, I do understand that. So, first, it's not lost on any of us, the irony of today, that as we release a report to address harms across generations, multifaceted harms, that at the same time, the Supreme Court has decided that affirmative action is not appropriate for this country. I would encourage the Supreme Court to read the interim report. I would encourage them to read the final report and to understand that the legacy of enslavement, the ongoing harms, are with us to this very day. And so this country is disingenuous. First, they used race to exclude us. And now they're refusing to use race to include us. So I wanted to just give you a very, very quick update about what has the task force accomplished. This is an historic body with an historic body of work. And so what have we done over the last 2 years? We have held 15 hearings, most of which were 2 days long. We have prepared a final report that includes over 115 different reparations recommendations that are aligned with the 12 categories of harm defined in our interim report. As of yesterday actually, we have been able to show that perhaps the Pew poll is not fully reflective of the attitudes of America. Why do I say that? Thanks to the hard work of Member Tamaki and Lisa Holder and other members of the task force, we have been able to compile over 302 organizations, some national, some California specific, that are endorsing the work of the task force. 302 organizations, including organizations like Advancing Justice Asian Law Caucus, the Chinese for Affirmative Action, the Los Angeles and San Francisco County Bar Associations, the Weingart Foundation, the California Wellness Foundation, the NAACP at the national level, the National Urban League at the national level. The list goes on and on. I would encourage people, go to supportreparations.org and read the letters of support. It gives a very different picture about this country's readiness to confront the challenges of race in this country, something we have never done. So what else, as I conclude, has the task force been able to do? We developed a compendium of racist California laws and cases, thanks to the hard work of members Tamaki and Holder. We have, and what they did was surveyed over 58 California Superior Courts and district attorney offices and 11 city attorney offices, revealing the lack of consistency and the discretion in what is collected and the absence of data, making it difficult to evaluate claims of racial discrimination in the criminal justice system. In collaboration with the Ralph Bunche Center at UCLA, we were able to do community engagement. We held 17 listening sessions across the state that included 867 participants, and coupled with that, we did a statewide poll, a random sample poll, coupled with a community survey and surveys of the participants in the listening sessions. Over 4,300 people participated in those polls and surveys. The results have been published in a scholarly journal article, but one of the things I want to lift up from that report is, again, it is in contrast to the Pew polls that people often will cite. So 60% of Californians support some form of reparations in this country. The time has come. America must step up. It's not just the well-being of people of African ancestry that is on the line. It is the very heart and soul of this country. If America is to be who she professes to be, then she has to do the right thing. And this time, in this generation, otherwise, I truly worry about democracy. I don't remember who said it, but the basic point I want to end on is that racism is incompatible with democracy. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor and privilege to be here before you today at the last hearing of the California Reparations Task Force. As you all know, this illustrious 9-member California Reparations Task Force, we have been working diligently over the course of 2 years, not only to study the innumerable atrocities against the African American community, with special consideration for those who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, but obviously we also have been working very diligently to develop numerous policy prescriptions to end what we consider to be the lingering badges and incidents of slavery in California. We also have recommendations in our final report that are targeted to the Congress and to Biden administration as well. So I'm here before you today to give you a preview of what we will be discussing at our final hearing. We will have 30 minutes of public comment, then we'll have 30 minutes of personal testimony where we've actually invited 3 Californians who would be eligible for reparations in the state to share their personal stories about the various different harms that they've endured in the state of California. Namely, we'll be hearing from Elmer Fonda, we'll be hearing from Yvette Porter Moore, and we'll be hearing from Marion Johnson. After personal testimony, you'll be hearing some reflections from each of the 9 members of the task force. You'll also be hearing some reflection from the California Department of Justice who assisted us in this work. And then afterwards, you'll have myself and Vice Chair Brown formally deliver the final report to elected officials to symbolically represent the formal passing over of our work to the legislature. And from there, it will be up to the legislature to turn our policy proposals into actual reparations legislation so that the material conditions and lives of African Americans, particularly those who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, actually change for the better. The last note I'll say, and I'll hand it over to my other task force members, today, as you all know, the Supreme Court struck down race-based preferences and our admissions in affirmative action. Coincidentally, on the day that the task force has our last hearing, my only note is to say our work remains unaffected largely by that decision because of the wisdom that we had in consulting with legal experts like UC Berkeley Law School Dean Erwin Chemerinsky, who predicted this outcome today. And that's why most of our policy prescriptions are not race-based, but they're based on lineage. They are for those who are descendants of slaves. So again, we made the right decision because of the wisdom and the wherewithal we had to consult with expert witnesses like Dean Erwin Chemerinsky and Secretary Weber, who pretty much told us who she had in mind when she authored AB 3121, and that are African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm Dr. Shirley Weber, California Secretary of State, and I want to welcome you to the Barge Farm U building that houses the offices and the programs of the California Secretary of State. I'm honored to be here with you, and I want to thank the task force for its diligence and its truly hard work. This is groundbreaking work that they've done in a nation that has oftentimes denied its responsibility for slavery and the impact of slavery on the lives of others. And so it's good to have you here. I want to thank the task force and 9 of them who worked very, very hard to make today possible. I also want to thank my good friend Rob Bonta as the Attorney General, because at the time when I wrote this bill a couple of years ago, we placed it into the Attorney General's office in his hands to make sure that he would administer the task force and make sure that the meetings occurred and the reports and assisted in terms of writing the recommendations themselves. So I'm really pleased that the Attorney General has been a partner in this and has worked very hard with us. So I want to thank him and his staff for that. It has not been easy accomplishing this task in terms of arriving to where we are. I decided some years ago, 2 years ago, that we would actually take on the challenge of reparations. It was because I felt very strongly that California, if any state could do it, it would be California. That this effort had been tried many times at the federal level, but because of the complexity of the politics of this nation and its resistance to any kind of change or activity with regards to African Americans, it had failed many times in terms of when it had been proposed and had not been supported. California was able to do it in less than a year. We proposed the recommendation for the task force, and in less than a year, we got it through both houses and signed by the governor. The work has been difficult, it has been hard, but it has been enlightening. And I hope those of you who get a chance to look at the report, whether it's the first report or the final report, you will see that it was important for us to do California. And it was important because so often when I was asked, when I was writing, and people said, California? Why California? And the issue often is why not? Because slavery in this nation went across the entire nation. People didn't just remain in the South. And the policies and the laws of this nation affected every state and many places beyond the state. And so it was important that we let people know that reparations is due whether you're in Mississippi or you're in California. That reparations is due, that the harm has been done, and we need to begin to repair the harm and stop patching it up as we have done for many, many years without any effort that's there. As mentioned, we all heard this morning about the Supreme Court and affirmative action. We fought that battle with Prop 209, with Proposition, I think 16 was it this past time. We fought that battle here in California many, many times. And I still am a firm believer in affirmative action. But at some point, African Americans have to get an opportunity and they must get justice. And so this is a harm-based program that talks about the harm that's done and the responsibility to repair it. You will see many things in this report as this group has worked for many, many, many months talking about all of the difficulty that has been in terms of how you do reparations. But the good thing is that you will see is that reparations is not an aberration. It is not something that's unusual. It is not something that is unreasonable, because so many have gotten reparations in this country and in the world. And it's the one thing that people realize, that when you have done harm, you have a responsibility to correct it and to make sure it never happens again. We have not done reparations for African Americans. We have done them from others, but we have not done it for African Americans who have probably suffered the most harm in this country. So I'm really pleased that you're here today. Our office is available and has been available to the task force during this process. The Secretary of State's office has. I want to thank my staff that has worked very hard attending all of the hearings, making sure that I get all the reports and all the information. I'm very proud of what we've done. We are excited about the California Legislative Black Caucus. At the time when I authored the bill, I was chair of the caucus. I'm grateful that they are here today and they are prepared to receive this report and to move forward with it so that we can see progress in California. Thank you so very much for being here.
Morning, my name is Don Tamaki. I'm one of the 9 members of the task force. I'm the only task force member who's not African American, and a member that has experience with the Japanese American redress and reparations effort. I want to echo what Secretary Weber just said about reparations. It is not a preposterous idea. It's not welfare. It's not a check in the mail. It's much more than that. It goes to the very heart of what we think we are as Americans, and Japanese Americans realize that. I want to focus too on what Member Grills had stated about the endorsement list. 2 organizations started that effort. It was a Black Bar Association, the John M. Langston Bar, and the Japanese American Bar Association, endorsing the concept that it is time to consider reparations in California. That list has grown, as of this morning, to 306 organizations. If you check it out, supportreparations.org, that list is diverse. There's a lot of Asian American support on that, as well as other communities who understand that we have to trace the racial pathology that impacts all of us from whence it originated, which is 1619. and just reverberated in one form or another after 246 years of enslavement, 90 years of Jim Crow and racial terror, and decade after decade more of discrimination, which, by the way, snared other racial populations. So this has to be led by African American people, but it is a distinctly American pathology that has to be addressed. So I thank you for your interest in covering the story.
I'm Reggie Jones Sawyer, Assembly Member. I wanted Senator Bradford to join me. So when this leaves and comes to us in the legislature, both the Senate and the Assembly, it's almost like passing the baton. Mr. Bradford and I will then have to carry it through the legislature and onto the governor's desk. It's not, I'm a little emotional because today, with the Supreme Court ruling, knowing that my uncle was one of the Little Rock Nine, was denied an opportunity to go to a high school, an all-white segregated high school, but now the Supreme Court is really bringing back de facto segregation. The fact that we here in California, who's experienced Prop 209, Thurgood Marshall must be spinning his grave right now. But California has an opportunity to reverse it and to do it in the right way, as others have said, because we're talking about harms. This is not race-based, this is harms-based, and the legislature has historically done different bills, legislative and budget bills, to reverse that. So Mr. Bradford and I will then, over the next year, in 2024, because we both are going to term out, we're going to work diligently to make sure we can get as much done out of the recommendations that will be given today as possible, so we can begin the process of reversing the atrocities that have been pushed on African Americans here in California. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the press corps. My name is Amos Theophilus Brown. Born in the state of Mississippi, February 20th, 1941. My great-great-grandfather, Patrick Brown, was enslaved in Franklin County, Roxy, Mississippi. 1821, my great-great-grandfather was enslaved, and I am his descendant. No, California was not officially a slave state, but in American systems of law, there are crimes that are committed, and one can become an accomplice in the crime. A crime has been done against the humanity of black people. And it's time for us in this nation, in this state, to admit our crime and to make sure that we atone for it and act to do something in order that we will have justice and redress for African Americans. Dr. Martin Luther King, my teacher, taught only one class in his lifetime, and I was one of the 8 students at Morehouse College in 1962. In that class, I remember him having said, if America has organized in a systematized way to do bad things against the Negro, it has the moral obligation to work with the Negro to do good things in behalf of the liberation of the Negro. That sounds like to me affirmative action and reparations. And if this country persists in doing what the Supreme Court has done, we will be indeed giving credence to the evil notion of one Aristotle, one of the founders of Western thought, who said that the black man of the Ethiopian was inferior because of the color of our skin, and that we will never be capable of self-governance, and we would always have to have a white man, a white woman over us. That's a lie, but that lie appears to be alive in this nation. And I trust and hope that more people of moral conscience, of goodwill and integrity will stand up and realize that this nation will not be able to go on as living a lie. It will go the way of ancient Rome, in which the Caesars were up at the top and the plebeians were shunted aside, as African Americans have been shunted aside in this nation and in this state. So my friends, we've done our work. And in Mississippi, where I came from, they also said, if a task is once begun, never leave it till it's done. Be the labor, great or small, do it well or not at all. This task force has done the job well done. And all we have to do is see whether or not America and California will live up to the promises that it has made for others. Thank you very much, and I thank God for this task force and its great work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you to the task force too. So this concludes the press conference, but just wanted to let you know that even though the task force sunsets on July 1st, that the Charles Communication Group has been retained to assist post-sunset to address any media inquiries after July 1st, okay? We will now open it up for questions.
I do have a question for Secretary of State Weber. Thank you. It's just one question.
That's okay.
Okay, and this is in regards to what Assemblyman Reggie Jones-Sawyer said about the Little Rock Nine. Pastor Amos, we know your relations or your knowledge of Emmett Till, but you, Secretary of State, Madam Weber, Elaine, Arkansas. Elaine, Arkansas.
Yes.
I just want to know what it means to you to, orchestrate legislation when you come from your family background, come from a past that made y'all, the members of the Great Migration West, and you were able to put together a legislation like this. What does that mean to you to stand here today to talk about that?
Well, I'm always grateful and humble because despite the challenges faced in being African American and a woman in this country, and having family a part of the Jim Crow South, and having to flee the South because my father was going to be lynched because he stood up for himself at the way station. He was a sharecropper. I look back on all of that, and I'm grateful for the fact that California had some opportunities for me. And so it's sad today when we think about affirmative action, even though I wasn't one of the affirmative action admittance because it happened the year after I was admitted. But the fact that there were so many, there's support systems that's there, and I saw the growth at the university. And so to be able to be a part of progress and see regress in terms of the kinds of things that's happening now is very heartbreaking in many, many ways when we think about how far we've come and yet how far we have not come in this nation with the racial hatred and division that exists against African Americans despite all of the contributions we have made to this country. But I thank my community, I thank my church, I thank those who were persevered, my parents, the neighbors that I had who believed in this little girl called Shirley Weber from Hope, Arkansas, and always told me every day, girl, you're gonna be something, little girl, you're gonna be somebody someday. And I never forget that. I never forget from whence I've come. And as a result of that, despite the fact that I'm Secretary of State and one of the 8 constitutional officers of the state of California and so forth and so on, I never forget from whence I have come. And that what I enjoy in terms of opportunity is not the norm. It is not what everybody else enjoys, and we should not get it confused because we've had a black president that means freedom is here. That we all continue to struggle to the least of us, as Thurgood Marshall said, to the least of us in this nation have the same opportunity as the best of us, that we still have a responsibility. So I'm honored to be able to author this legislation. I thank my colleagues here from the Black Caucus who were supportive of those efforts. I thank the governor for having the courage to sign that bill as well as many of the other bills that we authored to bring justice to California. And we have to keep being strong enough and persevering enough, because those who came before us did that. They didn't stop, they didn't move. And I know our time is up. There's another question from somebody else, okay?
Senator Bradford, could I ask you a question about how much you think you can achieve within the legislature? You know, how realistic do you think it is, A, that something will get approved, and B, that it'll be substantive enough to where it's actually going to make a difference for people? How far do you want to get?
We want to go as far as we can. We're going to be hopeful. We're going to be hopeful and as positive as possible. We know it's a challenge because we know a lot of folks over there across the street don't want to support reparations. We've seen it too many times. Just last year when we were trying to pass ACA 3 to end involuntary servitude in our prisons in California, and it was members that refused to vote on that measure. So we understand we have the tasks in front of us, but we're going to do something substantial, not aspirational, but very substantial. So I'm looking forward to it, and I know the Legislative Black Caucus, the 12 of us, will stand united in making sure we have substantive policy moving forward to address the wrongs here in California.
Can any of the task force members that would like to speak to any lessons learned throughout this 2-year-long process, and if you have advice for
should the governor get affirmative action? Question. Affirmative action. I just wanted to ask any members of the task force, does the report include the recommendation that the participation of African American students in public colleges and universities be increased or improved? And if so, will that withstand anything, will it withstand today's report?
Well, one of the recommendations is to provide free college tuition to descendants of slaves.
Thank you.
So we have numerous policy prescriptions in the areas of education that was namely formulated by Vice Chair Brown and members Don Tamaki. So if you all want to elaborate, you all can. The only note I'll say is one of the recommendations is to provide free college tuition at public colleges and universities for descendants of slaves. Not for all black people, but for descendants of slaves. So to that end, that recommendation remains unaffected by SCOTUS's decision today because it's not a race-based admissions preference.
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions. Hold on, wait. Sorry. Sophie, did you get your question answered?
I can respond like
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Yes, please.
So, one lesson is what other states can take from this. And I think the final report is a textbook pathway on how it might be replicated in other states and other locales. And that report, tracks these atrocities, but every locale can augment it with their own history. And so I think at least it's a start for other states. So I think that's one lesson.
Last question, Wendy.
Should the governor be here today, and are you guys disappointed that he's not?
Should the governor be here? I'm not responsible for the governor, but he is a friend. But let me simply say, the purpose of this effort is not a report to the governor. This is a report to the legislature. And that's something people should understand. The governor can only do so much. It is the legislature that has to formulate the programs as well as create the funding to implement the program. So the report is appropriately being given to the legislature. And that is why you have members of the legislature that's here, that's be a part of it, and they've begun to discuss exactly what they're going to do in moving forward. And the governor's role will be to support and assist in terms of signing the legislation that comes forward.
Okay. Guys, due to time, I think we have to wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good morning, everyone. Lisa Holder, member of the California Reparations Task Force. I do want to hold up this tone that everyone here worked so hard to build. This work has been relentless. It has been meticulous. It is unassailable. And it has been the work of a collective. We partnered with the Department of Justice. We partnered with hundreds of scholars. And we partnered with the community, public commenters, and participants in listening sessions who poured out their heart and their soul, who told us
some of the most devastating stories of racial discrimination and who shared their pain and made themselves vulnerable to this process. And that is why this book of truth will be a legacy, will be a testament to the full story. Only half the story has ever been told. Here is a document that tells us the full story. We are not post-racial. And I would recommend to anyone who's legislating or creating laws in this country, anyone who says that we are colorblind, that we have solved the problem of anti-Black animus and racism, I challenge you to read this document and try and come out with that position.
Thank you all.
Can you hold it up just for 1 sec so I can get this down?
How many pages? Almost 1,200 pages.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
we
much.
hope to see you guys at the post briefing. Thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. How are you? Did you get in last night?
We're such a girl.
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you so much. Very good. I didn't see all
Also happens you have a 25-year-old daughter. She's like, fix that sandwich. Sandwich, bring it. Show it. Okay, you okay? No, I can but I have a phone number. Get that? Will you come to the phone? Oh, come right now. Is the room too? I have the meter advisor.
Hello,